Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen Chellew, Legal Liaison, and Catherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
Welcome to We Chat Divorce. Catherine and I are so happy to have a discussion today with Cherie Morris, former lawyer and full-time divorce coach. Our episode today is all about divorce tips for couples, effective tools to shift communication so that you stay in your lane, or at least try to. That would be very difficult for me.
Yes, it is very difficult for you.
Across the board.
Cherie may be talking to us today.
Any couples at all, you're right. Business couples as well.
That's perfect. In this episode, we're going to talk about practical tools you can implement to manage conflict. But first, let's meet Cherie. Cherie practices as a divorce coach and parent coordinator. And as a matter of fact, she's just come out with her new course, Co-Parenting Compass. She'll be able to talk with you a little bit more about that later. She's also the founder of Dear Divorce Coach. Cherie has 4 children of her own and is part of a blended family. She's delighted to include her partner's daughter and say they have a combined 5. In addition to her work with Dear Divorce Coach, Cherie is available for parent coordination sessions and coaching sessions regarding divorce and other life transitions for individuals and couples too. Welcome, Cherie.
Thank you, Karen and Catherine, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's start out with your story. What led you to becoming a divorce coach?
So I went through my own high conflict divorce, and it's been about 14 years now. And I decided during that time that even though I had great resources, a really good lawyer, my own therapist, good financial advice, even amazing. Not everyone does, and not everyone can find people like you. I had good advice, but what I didn't have was someone like me now, a guide to all things divorce, to make really practical decisions in things like co-parenting, how to de-escalate conflict with a high conflict personality. And I started to investigate what that would look like, shifting my legal practice, which I found engaging, but could also solve legal problems for people and they still weren't happy. So what could I do? And using the information of my own experience in divorce to make a shift. And I found I could do that by doing some additional credentialing in mediation, in parent coordination, in coaching, to support people in the way I do now, which is to make sure they get to good resources like you and have an objective thinking partner to guide them in all things conflict.
That's so important because so many times people say, I should know this, I'm smart, I have a great job, but it's really hard not having a sounding board.
And when you don't have, the objectivity, right? I can always give you good advice, Catherine or Karen, but doing it for myself can be a little trickier because my emotions come up, the dysregulation occurs. And so having really practical tips and tools, in addition to doing perhaps the therapeutic work, right? Looking back on why you may find yourself where you are now. In coaching, it's all about how do we manage what's happening right now to regulate ourselves, take care of our children, and lead our next and best lives. So that's what I love about the work I do. And that's how it came to me and how I came to it. I think from my perspective, to be in this work that involves divorce, having been divorced is not a requirement, but it's pretty essential.
Yeah, always when you go through something yourself, you have a whole different perspective.
It's so true. And I find that everything I've done until now, including my legal training, informs the coaching work I do. So, coming to this place has really been the best possible career find for me. And I hope that my clients find there's real support there.
I love that you say that because really with every one of our clients, whether they hire us as a couple or individually, I often find myself saying, when you're going through the divorce process or even exploring the divorce process, it's almost essential that you're learning a new language or a new way to communicate, right? A different, maybe I should say a different way to communicate, so that, moving forward, whether you're co-parenting children or grandchildren, not co-parenting grandchildren, but, managing those post-divorce relationships, it is from a new lens. And it is. And if you haven't taken the steps to navigate that can be super challenging.
Well, Karen,
It's
you said co-parenting grandchildren. It actually is a thing,
It's so
right?
true.
Yeah. The
it's
ones
true.
the
It
one
goes on
in-law
for
that you
generations. Yes.
right. Well, the one in-law that you like, now you don't like, but you have to like because you want to see your grandchildren.
It's so
It's
true.
so true. And I think I find people are confused by the idea that in divorce, somehow their partner, who they're no longer intimate partners with, will magically transform to the person they've always wanted them to be. It sort of makes me laugh out loud, but I get it, right? We think,
Yeah.
well, we don't have to deal with them anymore. Well, guess what? If you have children, you actually have to deal with them likely more, especially if you were the primary parent and now have to share that authority and decision making. And it's someone that, if they're not your intimate partner, may be slightly less cooperative. So it is a really practical skill set, but that's just what it is. It's a tool that we need to teach people, in my experience. And once you learn it and unhook yourself from some of the drama, you can really thrive in the space.
It's great. So I know the families that we work with that work with you are able to be in a much better space when they're negotiating their finances because of the work they do with you. They're able to use those tools in a way that helps them get to the finish line transactionally much quicker than they would have otherwise.
I
It's
love
palpable.
can I share a story? I love a joint client that we had, and I was going through division scenarios, and one didn't like the scenario outlook so much, and all they kept saying, "I need to do it by this date because I'm going to see Sherry." And I was like, "Absolutely, positively, I want you to go see Sherry."
I like that I'm the leverage point. That makes me really
Exactly.
happy.
I'm just a numbers person, right?
Well, honestly, it is so rare and so unique to find people that do what you do, and it so uncomplicates the work I do, because if we have data, it's everything, right? They're dividing one house into two. The expenses, the incomes, the retirement, all of that. If we can look at what that looks like, it makes all the difference. It explains why people can live in a particular way, or sometimes, unfortunately, and mostly in divorce, why they can't. But at least there's a rational basis. And applying that with the lens of the law, right? If they have their own attorneys that I recommend, then we just have a rational jumping off place, and that de-escalates the whole system.
That's amazing. Yeah. So let's dive in then. So Sherry, tell us, what is couples coaching?
So, couples coaching is a pretty unique niche, I think, that very few people do, and that I founded about 9 years ago. And the idea was, you probably heard of collaborative divorce, where you have a team of people, including people like yourself, who act as a financial neutral. You have a coach, who would be someone like me. You each have a lawyer, and then you come together as a team and work out the details of divorce. The coaching I do can be outside or inside the collaborative process. And when it's outside, it just means I refer them to people like you. You do the financial piece. Maybe they have therapists as well, individually, and individual lawyers. But this is a place, the coaching space, where they can come together to talk about anything that comes up as a disagreement. Because of my legal background, I'm able to even talk about property if they want. It doesn't mean I'm telling them what the law is, because I'm not practicing law, but I'm holding space for that conversation. I feel pretty comfortable doing it. But we also have a place to talk about the co-parenting. What does it mean? What does it look like? Not only where the kids will live, but how they're going to divide those expenses. What does spousal support, child support, what's it all mean, and what's it look like? So having the chance to have people be seen and feel heard is incredibly important in my experience in divorce. So having a couples coach can really transform and save you resources in the long run in divorce, whether you do it inside or outside the collaborative experience.
I say that often, so I'm really going to agree with your approach here, giving the couples a space to be heard and to be involved does change the process. We set up our platform so that both parties can share the documentation. And if one party doesn't have access and the other one does, okay, well, here's your time to share that, because you will have to share it at one point. But why do you need to share it with two attorneys who aren't letting you be heard in front of each other, where you can share it in a platform together and be heard, and then take it to your respective attorneys when you want to? But providing that space just in the document upload and then the assessment of that, so everybody gets to listen and hear it at the same time, because one party always thinks they know more than the other one, and sometimes they do, but
Yes.
the other one needs that time to catch up to them. So our process gives that autonomy of that financial information, which I think is invaluable when it comes to talking about dollars and cents.
And one of the things I add to the couples coaching process, I always start with an hour on Zoom with each person. So each part of the couple. And the reason I do that is we have a lot to say, right, when we're going through divorce, about the whys, the wheres, the whens. And having space, holding that, having people be seen and heard, as you said, Catherine, makes a real difference. But also it makes a difference in my professional experience not to have them necessarily repeat that again and again in front of each other. So I spend that first hour with them individually, and then we come together and create what I call an agenda for success meeting. And hopefully by then they've met with you, they've had a chance to decide about legal counsel. And I really do like people to have individual lawyers. It's my personal preference over one mediator. So they're getting individual legal advice. Now, my only bias is that it be a de-escalating lawyer, but let's have all those people in play, have had a conversation at least. We're starting the financial process. And then let's get together and talk. What do we need to talk about? Where are we on the financials? What do you think of your lawyer? Have they talked to each other in an efficient way? And then what work are you doing in the background with co-parenting? Are we going to work on a parenting plan together, which is something else I can do and think is very important for the couple? So it's really staying in connection, as you suggested, Catherine, that can really make a fundamental difference, because we can also just clear up some simple misunderstandings right there on the screen as everyone sits in their comfortable space, perhaps holding the teddy bear in their lap.
Oh boy, does that follow through to a document? You can have a document where one spouse says they gave it, the other one says they didn't. Then when we pull up the document and say, this is the document we received, but it's not necessarily the one that we asked for, it's very easy for us to say that than the spouse saying, you're hiding something from me. Or we say to the other spouse, yes, this is the document and this is the information on here. Let us walk you through that. So it neutralizes either way.
And it's so good when it comes to financials, because I think for so many of us, and you know this much better than I, people feel really escalated around money, right? Especially if they haven't been the primary financial person. And so just having a space for you to explain to them, have a clear list, and be able to provide it in a way that's neutral is incredibly helpful to the work I do, for sure.
And just being able to negotiate off of information, data, and supporting documents that have been provided together. Because short of that, someone's going to misunderstand what a document means. They're going to have their own interpretation. Then they go to their counsel or their attorney and say, this wasn't produced. And then you're spending $5,000 arguing about something that someone just misinterpreted to begin with. And so when they're sitting with us, all we have to do is click to that category right on their portal that they both have access to. Let's look at this and let us explain to you what the line item is. And typically it's just a clarification to help them understand that it was just misinterpreted to begin with, whether it's a number on that document, a date on the document, a note on the document, whatever it is, so that you can continue the conversation and you haven't been sidetracked by an argument.
And it's so interesting to me because I think, Karen, what Catherine said was true also. Eventually, you're going to have to produce this stuff.
Mhm.
So why don't we do it now so that you have transparency? And some people are stuck, of course, right? They're stuck in the worry of what that means or what that looks like or what they really have to do. But introducing them to a process that feels more neutral and supportive, I think, is a first good step to get them there. And it doesn't always work. We know that too, but it can work if both people get invested. And one of the things I try to work on right away is getting people unhooked from their story of divorce, right? That this person who was their primary partner, who is ultimately their co-parent, may not be trustworthy. And there may be good reason for that. I'm not discounting that, but establishing a new relationship now and figuring out what you can trust and what you will do to save your resources to live your next and best life is incredibly important. So a lot of the time and space I spend energy on is giving them practical tools to do just that. And a lot of it has to do, as you said, Karen, with communication, how we're going to communicate with each other. And if I may just give a simple example, right? It's not, where is that document, you silly fool? You still haven't given it to Catherine and Karen, but instead I don't see that document in the portal and I'm curious if you uploaded it, right? Like a simple shift in tone can make all the difference. And I coach a method called BIF, which you both may be familiar with, but it's developed by Bill Eddy for co-parenting, but really applies in all these spaces, which is keep your messages mostly by email if you can, so they're not abrupt and interrupting to your spouse or former spouse. Keep the message brief, the information that you need, a friendly tone, which is important. Doesn't mean you have to be friendly, but a friendly tone. And then a firm boundary, which just means let's add a deadline by which we need that to happen, or you're going to have to take some other action. So doing that is not always what we want because it doesn't give us that emotional catharsis, but save that for the first draft and then go back 24 hours later, rewrite it, and send the message you should that may actually get you the result that you want.
We even take it one step further and make it easier. I don't know, ask MDS. They're the ones asking for it.
I love that. I have so many questions clients can ask you. It may not be financial at all, right? Yeah.
Great. So Cherie, when you were just talking, is that part of the process? Because we do want to go through specifically the process you use that
Yes.
really is effective.
So what I do is schedule the meetings, as I said, first to meet individually with the people. And sometimes I'm actually working in addition to divorce with family conflicts. So maybe I have 12 members of a family system. I'm meeting individually with them. Usually it's not that big. But in general, I'm going to meet with the people in the system individually first. And then we create an agenda for success. And in that meeting, we'll talk about issues. It doesn't mean we're going to solve them all, not surprisingly, but we're at least beginning to investigate how to get more information, more data, thinking about things like co-parenting, what we want the plan to look like. People obviously may not even know what a parenting plan is or what's contained in it or how we co-parent. So talking about these issues together starts the process. And after that, my process continues with individual or joint conversations. Once you're a client, you can text me because I want to be that first person that knows when escalation occurs. I'm not 911, you won't be surprised to hear, but I am a place to come and say, let's think through what's really going on. Is that escalation required? Can we rethink the process you're about to follow? So I'm very much a hands-on practical tips and tools individually and jointly with whoever is in our system. And by the end of the process, if we have this team approach, hiring MDS, hiring lawyers, and perhaps having individual therapy as well, then we get to a place where all the components are there. And I find by the end of the package, and in general, I work in a 10-hour package because, as I like to say, from soup to nuts, that's about what it takes in general for me to work with clients. And sometimes there are multiple packages, right? Depending on the couple or the family system. But in general, about 10 hours is what it takes to get from we have this big conflict we don't know how to solve to we can start our lives separately and continue to co-parent together. And so that's the process. It's really about knowing, when to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help. And that's, I think, what coaching adds, especially in divorce, that didn't exist before. It's not your lawyer who really is there to give you legal advice, right? It's not your financial person who's really there to analyze your data, but it's someone else who can help you unhook from this escalation and figure out a path forward.
And stay in your lane.
Well, exactly. And sometimes that's hard to hear for all of us. I know it's hard for me to hear, but the truth is You can't control the other. And if I say that once a day, I say it 100 times. So even if we want a particular result, attempting to control will never work. So what can we do? And then what can we let go? And that is really the key to the whole process in my experience. And of course, some hard work digging in to understand your financials and perhaps understanding, why you find yourself in this place so that you can live your next and best chapter. But that's right. It's staying in your lane and then looking forward to see how you can grow and thrive after that. It doesn't have to be, in my professional experience doing this almost 10 years now and longer based on my own divorce, a bad place to be. It's a place of growth and learning, but we do have to take personal responsibility for our role in it, even if we didn't want this divorce, even if there's malfeasance by the other party, by our spouse. What can we do to turn that into a learning for us? And what can we do to thrive in our next chapter?
It's probably the best investment you're going to make in yourself, because even though it's not a bad place to be, it's not really a great place to be either, but it is where you are. So do you want to do that, getting yourself prepared and informed so that you make really good decisions for yourself and have a sounding board so that you can get through it? Well, yeah, you should, because now we have all these resources. I mean, they weren't here when I got divorced 12 years ago, but they're here now. So why not utilize them and spend a little money on yourself, because it's going to be the best money you spend.
Yeah. Short of that, you're going to be spending a lot of money on attorney's fees. And, I call it on the hamster wheel, because at the end of the day, in most relationships, I don't want to say all of them, but pretty high percentage, there's a spender and a saver. There's a risk manager and I don't know, what's the other adjective there, but you have
The defiant one.
The spendthrift.
Yeah. There's the yin and the yang, right?
No. Yeah. I think she's talking about us, right, Cherie?
Yes. But I find that in most couples that we work with, that, there's always the yin and the yang that people have just settled into in their specific dynamic of their relationship. And, to your point, Cherie, you have to unhook that and become more pragmatic and more neutralized as you're moving forward, because you're moving forward into autonomy. You're not moving forward in that same relationship. So I appreciate
love
that.
the yin and the yang. I love that expression. And I always say, when, not everyone is a Buddhist, obviously, but I apply, from all faiths, the best tenets. And one of the things in Buddhism is this idea of non-attachment, which is incredibly hard for me, by the way, but really the most important thing. And so if I can help my clients get there, it's probably the best work I do every single day.
Yeah, I love that. So, Cherie, you may have covered this, but I don't want to skip over it. Why does the process work?
Great question. And I'd like to say that it's all science, but I think there's a little magic in there too. So I think it works, Karen, because I think bringing people together to communicate effectively, get over the hump of those simple misunderstandings, creates a new relationship. It isn't the relationship you had before, which is ending, obviously, in separation or divorce, but it's a new relationship, and you can build a new foundation for trust in co-parenting, in money management. And I think communication is the key to that, the right kind of communication. The cathartic communication will save for our coach, will save for our therapist and our friends, but the clear BIF communication we're going to have with someone who's no longer our intimate partner can rebuild a foundation for trust going forward so that we can thrive. So in my experience, that's why it works. And having a facilitator to hold the safe space for that, so people know they can be heard within this container, is transformative in my experience.
Cherie, how do you hold yourself and clients accountable to the process then?
I think the best way to hold people accountable is to be unafraid to tell them what you hear. It doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong, but it means that the way they may express something perhaps could be interpreted negatively by their former partner. So helping them not by shaming, but by teaching and by skills-based training. Let's try to do this a little differently. Does that work for you? Now, absolutely, I need the client's buy-in, because most of their communication will not be in front of me. But really, I think the key is teaching people how to communicate differently and holding them accountable means calling them on it when I see it not happening. And by the way, I usually do that privately. If we're in session together, I can certainly do it more gently, but it's a really important way to teach people a new skill without shame.
That's fantastic. And really necessary, especially in the divorce process, because it's such a emotional experience anyways, and the whole divorce process is so foreign to really anyone unless you've gone through it yourself. And so you can easily get caught up in discussions or communication that if someone was just there to clarify. I find myself often in a discussion where I'll hear one spouse or the other say, you know, the judge is going to order this because he or she didn't give that document. Well, actually, no, that's not how it works. So, go back and ask your attorney these questions. Your attorney actually has the ability to get the documentation needed. You can't get all the way to a trial and expect that the judge is going to come down hard on your spouse because he or she didn't give documentation. That's not going to happen,
Karen,
right?
that's such a good point. I'm so glad you're bringing up the litigation process because I do think people still have a sense of the TV show form of justice, right? There's the big aha moment, and it's so rare. Judges are so busy and distracted and maybe not focused on your case. I see so many bad results when people go to trial. So if you can save yourself the emotional and financial toll of that process, it's probably the best advice we can give anyone.
Yeah, but the only way
Absolutely.
to save yourself from that is being prepared from the beginning. I see a lot of people who are threatened that if they go to trial, they'll get a worse deal. And they get a worse deal by not going to trial sometimes. It's because they're not prepared. So, really, what we're all talking about today, is, if you're listening, is wherever you are in the process, take a stop. You need help and you need to make sure you're prepared. And it's okay. It's okay to need help and it's okay to take a step back. And if you're just starting the process, give yourself the best chance for a good finish by getting prepared, so that you're never bullied into making a decision that you're not ready to make.
And I want to clarify because I love that point, Catherine. There are cases that must go to trial. I think one of the stopgaps between litigation and trial is mediation. So when I suggest that people have individual legal counsel, that's different than considering mediation if you are litigating. It can be transformative too. Having someone sit down, if you're prepared, you have the data saying, this is the likely result, and bringing you to some reasonable middle ground can be very helpful too. So I think using that term stopgap is incredibly important. Where are you now? What do you need to do so that you avoid a terrible result for your financial and emotional future? And I think all of us can always take a look at that in any category of our lives, but especially in divorce, there's some real crucial moments to do that. And preparation is the key.
Absolutely. Cherie, how can our listeners find you and learn more about you?
So the best way to find all things Cherie Morris is at deardivorcecoach.com. I've just launched a co-parenting course called Co-Parenting Compass that helps people just starting this process that are having some bumps in the middle or even post-divorce trouble with co-parenting. And if you go to the website, deardivorcecoach.com, you can find out how to work with me individually, how to access the course. It's a really affordable way to get started in your work with me. And everything is there. There's even an advice column. So there's lots of just easy, free information, including an opportunity to do a networking or discovery Zoom with me if you're interested in working with me.
Excellent.
Awesome.
This concludes our discussion on divorce tips for couples, effective tools to shift communication so that you can stay in your lane. Thank you so much for a fantastic conversation, Cherie.
Thank you, Catherine and Karen. It was great.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.